What's up, dog? Welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be talking about the Defensive Player of the Year race between Rudy Gobert and Ben Simmons and why it is as simple as those two. Now, when I get into it, you go and you think about, all right, well, there isn't a clear-cut definition for which player is better at defense. You only got to go off these stats. So I'm going to give you some stats and you can take what you will with them. All right, so the first stat I'm going to use is defensive rating. All right, and that is how well your team is at defense when you're on the floor versus off the floor. All right, so Rudy Gobert makes the Jazz the best defensive. I want to say the best defense, but defensive rating isn't necessarily just defense, but the Jazz, when Rudy Gobert's on the floor, the Jazz have the best defensive rating at 105. And when he's off the floor, they have the second worst defense with 115.2. Now, compare that to Simmons. Simmons, when the Sixers defense, when Simmons is on the floor, is 107.3. And when he is off the floor, they are 108. Which is good for the second best defense when he's off the floor. And you're like, okay, well, why is their defense so good when he's off the floor? Well, it's simply because they have better defenders on their team. They have Joel Embiid whenever Ben Simmons messes up. And Ben Simmons doesn't mess up that often, to his credit. But then you're like, okay, well, who else do they have? They also have Matisse Thybulle, and they also have, Danny Green. And all those guys are very good defenders. Very good defenders. Now, you look at the Jazz's second best defender, and it's Royce O'Neal. All right, now Royce O'Neal, don't get me wrong, he's pretty good, but he's not a Joel Embiid, all right? And he's not even as good as Matisse Thybulle or even Danny Green, to his credit, at defense. So, Royce O'Neal's good, but he's only a 6'4" power forward. So, we'll leave it at that. But then, all right, defensive rating, we can write that off and say, all right, well, it's not Ben Simmons' fault that his team has better defenders on it. He's still the best defender, all right? You might say that, and you're like, the argument behind that is, what is he a better defender at? And they're like, oh, he's more versatile. And then everybody's like, oh, yeah, he's right. Ben Simmons guards 1 through 5. And you're like, okay, well, then I looked into this, and I was like, okay, is he really more versatile? And he is. He is much more versatile. He is the 7th most versatile defender in the NBA. He ranks in the 86th percentile. And compare that to Rudy Gobert, who's in the 54th percentile. So more than a 30% difference in their versatility, all right? So you're like, oh, okay. So Ben Simmons seems to be more versatile, and Rudy Gobert seems to be less versatile than Ben Simmons. And then after you look at that, you're like, okay, well, the thing with Gobert that everybody points to is like, okay, well, Gobert is an impact defender, right? The Jazz run their defense through Rudy Gobert. So he's going to have a better impact on the game defensively because he is, he's their defense, I guess. They run their defensive scheme through Rudy Gobert. And the Sixers don't run it through Ben Simmons. Ben Simmons is just their best defender. They put Ben Simmons on the opponent's best player as long as he's not a center. Because the center will be guarded by Joel Embiid. Anyways. So then you're like, okay, well, then that means Ben Simmons, his case is that he's a better individual defender, right? He can lock down one player while Rudy Gobert locks down a team as a whole. Maybe not to the degree that Ben Simmons would lock down one individual player, but he'll lock it down as a team. Like, your team isn't going to be performing as well offensively if you're going against Gobert versus if you're going against the Sixers. Your one player that's being guarded by Ben Simmons is going to perform significantly worse, but all the other guys might perform, just their averages, whatever. So Ben Simmons can knock down one player while Rudy Gobert can have a marginal impact on a team, right? That's what everybody says. That's the rumor going around. And Ben Simmons is like, he pointed to that again because he's like, oh, I had 42 when Rudy Gobert was guarding me, which, I mean, from a casual perspective, you're like, oh, yeah. I mean, he had 42 that game, and Rudy Gobert is their best defender. I mean, Ben Simmons only scores in the paint, so Rudy Gobert definitely, he's the reason. Like, Rudy Gobert's not that good of a defender because Ben Simmons, who's not a scorer, scored 42 on his head. Well, he didn't score 42 on his head, all right? He scored 6 points on his head, all right? He went 3 for 9, all right? And that's 33%. That is like, that's almost, that's much worse. He was way less efficient when guarded by Rudy Gobert, and you can't even say he scored 42 on his head because he wasn't guarded by Rudy Gobert. I mean, Rudy Gobert has an impact on his shots, so when he was or happened to be guarded by Rudy Gobert, he shot worse because that's what Rudy Gobert does. Anyways, so then the next thing, well, what I was hinting at before was that Ben Simmons is a better individual defender and Rudy Gobert is a better team defender, right? And whatever one you like more is whoever you're going to pick for Defensive Player of the Year. Well, I'm here to tell you that is wrong. That is not how you base it off of. Ben Simmons, in terms of opponent field goal percentage and how many shots they take, he is not a better individual defender. When Rudy Gobert guards his man, they, on average, have a worse field goal percentage by 11%. It's decreased by 11% on average when Rudy Gobert is guarding them, all right? And then when Ben Simmons guards a player, their field goal percentage decreases by 4.1. So don't get me wrong, Ben Simmons is a great defender. I mean, he brought their averages down by 4.1, which is great. I'd take that any day. But to say that Rudy Gobert is a worse individual defender does not make any sense because he guards his individual matchup better than Ben Simmons by more than double. So there's no validity to the argument saying that, oh, Ben Simmons is going to lock down whoever he guards, But that guy, just take him out of the equation because Ben Simmons is on him. Like, that does no. He is going to make it harder for him. Ben Simmons is definitely going to make it harder on the other player to score, but he only on average brings it down by 4.1%. And you compare that to Rudy Gobert, who brings it down by 11.1% on his opposing player. Which, by the way, there's a much larger sample size for Rudy Gobert. I mean, Ben Simmons' sample size is still pretty large, but it's much larger for Rudy Gobert. So players take a lot of shots on Rudy Gobert because they think they can score on him, and they never learn, and they always shoot worse. They shoot much worse. So if you look at it as a whole, Rudy Gobert has the better impact as a team. His team, when he's on the floor, the Jazz have the best defensive rating, and when he's off the floor, they have the second worst. When Ben Simmons is on the floor, they have a very good 107.3, but that is due to all the other players that have significant impacts on their defense. And then that explains why when he's off the floor, it doesn't drop off that much. It only drops off by 0.7, while Rudy Gobert's drops off by a whole 10 fucking percent. All right. So then the only thing Ben Simmons has is he's able to guard 1 through 5. That's it. He can guard 1 through 5. Doesn't necessarily mean he's guarding them better, but he's just able to guard 1 through 5. All right. Well, what Rudy Gobert does, he stays in his domain, and his domain is defense, and he is much better at it than Ben Simmons, simply put. He's a better team defender, and he's a better individual defender. The only argument you have is versatility. Now go and comment down below, tell me why I'm wrong, and explain to me, educate me. I'd love to learn. But when I looked at the stats and I did a little bit of research, Ben Simmons, from my perspective, it doesn't look like he's much better than Rudy Gobert in anything. I'd say Ben Simmons is probably number 2, and he's still better than a lot of other players. but he's not better than Rudy Gobert in terms of impact or individual defense in terms of field goal percentage and defensive rating. But comment down below. Let me know why I did wrong, what I said wrong. Like the video if you think I did right. But yeah, anyways, guys, this is Basketball Fanatics and deuces.